Tonight, in this deep dive, we are looking at a feeling that almost everyone knows, but very few people actually understand.
Absolutely. It's something that touches literally every single romantic relationship.
Yeah, we've got this fascinating stack of research in front of us today. We're pulling from behavioral psychology, marital studies, and this really interesting emerging field of financial therapy. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically decode the hidden emotional language of money.
Right. Because the goal here is not to, give you another budgeting spreadsheet.
No, definitely not. We are not going to sit here and tell you to stop buying lattes.
Exactly. The point is to help you understand why those financial disagreements happen in the first place. And, to help you see your own money behaviors, whatever they might be, not as these deep character flaws, but as perfectly human responses to your deepest needs.
Yeah, that is the perfect starting point because to really get what the research is saying, we have to look at how these dynamics actually play out in everyday life.
We do. And it's usually in the most mundane moments.
Right. So picture this. You and your partner are standing in the kitchen and you're having an argument over a $50 receipt.
We have all been there.
Right. Maybe it's for like a slightly more expensive brand of organic groceries, or maybe it's a new shirt. And on the surface, $50 is a relatively trivial amount of money in the grand scheme of your life together.
It really is.
But suddenly your heart rate is up, their voice is raised, and you both know deep down it is absolutely not about the $50 anymore. It feels like this massive existential fight.
It feels like a threat.
Yeah. Why does a small purchase suddenly feel like a personal betrayal?
Well, look, if that scenario sounds painfully familiar to you, the absolute first thing you need to hear from the data is that you are not broken.
No, not at all.
You are participating in a remarkably common human experience. In fact, if we look at the demographic research we pulled, roughly 1/3 of all couples list money as their primary ongoing source of conflict.
1/3.
Yeah, 1/3. It is incredibly prevalent.
I mean, that makes me feel a lot better, honestly, just knowing it's that common. But why is it so common? Like, if we are two rational adults who can, navigate careers and mortgages and raising kids, why do we absolutely lose our minds over a grocery receipt?
We lose our minds because we are operating under this very pervasive myth. And the myth is the idea that money is just math.
Oh, that it's just numbers on a screen.
Right. Society teaches us that personal finance is simply addition and subtraction. But think about it. If money were purely logistical, couples wouldn't fight about it with such visceral intensity.
Yeah, the math is easy.
Exactly. The math is easy. The meaning behind the math is what causes the friction.
Because keeping a basic ledger is something an 8-year-old can do.
Which is funny you say that because Dr. John Gottman, a very renowned relationship researcher, he actually proved that exact point in this brilliant way.
Oh, right, the 8-year-old experiment. I love this.
It's so good. So he went to a group of 8-year-olds and he asked them for marital financial advice. He set up this hypothetical scenario for them.
What was the scenario?
He described a husband who wants to spend money and enjoy life today because he had an Uncle Jack. And Uncle Jack worked incredibly hard, saved millions of dollars, but lived miserably in a one-room condo and died without ever enjoying the fruits of his labor.
So the husband is terrified of becoming Uncle Jack.
Terrified of it. Then Gottman described the wife to these kids. She grew up with severe financial instability, she lacked security during emergencies, and now she wants to save every single penny for the future.
So they are in total gridlock.
Total gridlock. And Gottman looked at these children and asked, well, what should they do?
I'm incredibly curious how an 8-year-old solves a deep-seated psychological standoff like that.
Well, one of the children just raised their hand and simply said, save some and spend some.
Wow. Just simple logic.
To a child, is it pure logic? Work out a mathematical compromise.
Yeah.
But adults can't always do that, right? Because adults carry what Gottman calls money maps.
Money maps. So that is what this is called?
Yes. A money map is the internal, often completely subconscious blueprint of what money actually represents to you.
Because our relationship with money is sculpted by our childhoods.
Completely. Our past traumas, the economic class we were raised in, and just observing our parents.
It's like you're trying to navigate a cross-country road trip together, but you and your partner are looking at two completely different maps where half the roads are invisible to the other person.
That visualization captures the friction perfectly. Let's look at the couple in Gottman's example.
Yeah.
For the wife, Money doesn't just mean purchasing power at the store, it means survival.
Right. I mean, safety.
It means a buffer against the chaos and fear she experienced growing up. A high bank balance is literally a biological safety blanket to her nervous system.
And for the husband, money means freedom. It means avoiding the tragic, hollow existence of his Uncle Jack.
Exactly. So when you were standing in that kitchen fighting over a $50 receipt, you aren't fighting about groceries.
Not at all.
For the wife, spending that $50 feels like inviting chaos back into her life. And for the husband, being told not to spend it feels like being locked in Uncle Jack's one-room condo. You are fighting over your hidden dreams, your deep fears, and your fundamental feelings of safety.
Man, that reframes the entire argument. But, I was looking through the sources, and I hit this statistic that absolutely floored me.
The perpetual problem stat.
Yes, because if these money fights are clashes of our core identities, does that mean they can ever be permanently fixed? Cause of the research states that 69% of relationship problems are perpetual, meaning they are literally unfixable.
It is a jarring number to read.
I mean, wait, so are you telling me that almost 70% of the time we shouldn't even try to fix our financial fights? Like, are we just doomed to argue about the organic groceries forever?
It is entirely natural to feel defeated by that number, but we really have to pull back and look at the psychological context here. The research draws a very hard line between solvable problems and perpetual ones.
Okay, so what's a solvable problem?
A solvable problem is situational. It's logistical. For example, whose turn is it to physically log in and pay the electricity bill this month? Or, what software are we using to track our expenses? You can fix that.
Right, you just pick an app and move on.
Exactly. A perpetual problem stems from fundamental, unchangeable differences in personality or lifestyle needs.
Like the money maps.
Precisely. One of you genuinely thrives on security and predictability. The other genuinely values spontaneity and living in the moment. You cannot fundamentally change your partner's core personality.
So when those core personalities collide over a shared bank account, what actually happens?
It lands couples in what Collar Financial, which is a firm that specializes in the intersection of wealth management and psychological therapy, they call it the emotional tornado zone.
The emotional tornado zone? Even without knowing the clinical definition of that, I feel like I can picture exactly what that feels like.
Most of us have been caught in it, right? The emotional tornado is the phenomenon where a conversation shifts in a matter of seconds. Like you go from a calm, logical discussion about retirement timelines into an intense, highly defensive, and completely irrational argument about who bought too much takeout last week.
Oh yeah, it escalates so fast.
It happens because a threat to your money map feels like a threat to your actual survival. So the goal with perpetual problems isn't to fix the unfixable.
Because you can't turn a natural spender into a natural saver.
Right, you can't. The goal is to manage the problem by moving from gridlock into dialogue.
But in the heat of that tornado, how do couples usually handle it? Because I imagine most people don't just, take a deep breath and gracefully step into an empathetic dialogue.
Unfortunately, the default human response is something psychologists call polarization.
Polarization, meaning going to extremes.
Yes. It's this tragic dynamic where an initial manageable difference hardens into rigid, extreme behaviors. Let's say you lean slightly towards saving, and your partner leans slightly towards spending.
Which is pretty normal.
In a healthy dynamic, that's totally fine. But in a polarized dynamic, the saver panics at the spender's habits. So they become a strict, controlling miser to compensate.
And the spender feels suffocated by that miser.
Right. And in an act of rebellion and frustration, they become even more frivolous. They dig into their trenches.
They stop trying to find a solution and they just start arguing to win. Or really just to protect themselves.
Both.
Yeah.
But the research suggests that if couples can recognize the tornado happening, drop their armor, and actually understand the childhood fear or the dream underneath their partner's behavior, they discover something called complementarity.
Meaning they complement each other.
Exactly. Instead of polarizing, they realize they actually need each other. The saver brings necessary stability and future-proofing to the relationship, while the spender ensures the couple actually experiences joy and makes memories along the way.
That makes so much sense. But if these psychological blueprints are pulling our strings that deeply, we really need to understand the mechanics of how this works. Our research stack includes some heavy behavioral science that explains exactly why we polarize and act out.
Yes, a fascinating study from Brigham Young University provides the perfect framework for this. They utilize the vulnerability stress adaptation model.
The VSA model.
Right, the VSA model. They used it to examine how romantic attachment orientations dictate financial behavior.
Okay, let's break that down, starting with the VSA model itself. What exactly is that mechanism?
The VSA model is a framework researchers use to understand how a relationship degrades or thrives over time. Vulnerability refers to the enduring psychological traits we carry into the relationship,
Like our childhood baggage.
like childhood baggage or our attachment style. Stress represents the everyday events that trigger us, like an unexpected car repair or a messy kitchen.
An adaptation.
Adaptation is how we behave in response to that stress. Do we communicate? Do we yell? Or do we hide? The BYU study specifically looked at our vulnerabilities, namely our romantic attachment styles, and how they adapt to the stress of money.
And the sources highlight two main types of insecure attachment here, anxious and avoidant. How do those actually play out in our wallets?
Let's look at attachment anxiety first. Someone with an anxious attachment style typically holds a negative view of themselves, but a highly positive view of others.
So they carry a deep-seated fear of abandonment.
Yes, and they constantly crave closeness and validation. The mechanism here is that this anxiety drives people to use money as a tool to gain love, attention, or admiration.
How does that look in practice?
They adapt to relationship stress by overspending on extravagant gifts, picking up the check for everyone, or funding lavish experiences just to secure their partner's affection. They are terrified that if they aren't providing financial joy, they will be left behind.
Wow. So anxious attachment is essentially trying to buy affection to soothe your nerves. What about the other side of the coin? Attachment avoidance.
Attachment avoidance operates on the exact opposite mechanism. These individuals hold a positive view of themselves, but a negative, distrustful view of others.
So they don't want to rely on anyone.
Right, they place a massive premium on absolute independence. For them, money isn't a tool for connection. It is a tool for power, control, and keeping a safe emotional distance.
So how do they adapt?
Their behavioral adaptation is to hoard money or insist on keeping finances entirely separate, ensuring they never have to depend on their partner.
Building a fortress of cash so you don't have to rely on anyone. That makes so much sense. But it's not just attachment styles in the research, right? There's also that study published in the journal Core that looked at the big 5 personality traits.
The core study adds another critical layer by looking at the trait of conscientiousness. In psychology, conscientiousness measures a person's level of organization, forward planning, and impulse control. And this study found a direct, measurable link between low conscientiousness and chaotic financial behavior.
Well, because if you lack impulse control and forward planning in your daily life, you're obviously going to lack it at the checkout counter.
Precisely. People scoring low in conscientiousness are naturally more impulsive and less organized. The study found these individuals are significantly more likely to have disorganized, chaotic finances.
And when things are chaotic, you panic.
You panic. And crucially, because their finances are chaotic and they feel overwhelmed, they are highly prone to engaging in financial secrecy to avoid dealing with the consequences.
Which brings us to a really uncomfortable question. If our attachment styles, our impulsivity, and our fears are creating these intense emotional tornadoes, it makes total sense why people would just want to avoid the storm entirely.
It does.
Does this explain why couples start keeping secrets from each other?
It explains it perfectly. When the psychological differences clash too violently, couples simply go underground. And the numbers on this are staggering. According to the data, 27% of people outright admit to keeping a financial secret from their romantic partner.
Over a quarter of people are just openly admitting to hiding things.
But the nuance in the data is what is truly revealing. When researchers changed their methodology, so instead of just asking the broad question, do you keep secrets?
Right, which people might lie about.
Exactly. Instead, they provided a specific list of financial behaviors. And a massive 53% of people selected actions that classify as financial infidelity.
Over half.
Yeah.
What specific behaviors classify as financial infidelity?
The list includes things like pretending a newly purchased item is actually old, physically hiding receipts or shopping bags,
Wow.
lying about the actual price paid for something, claiming you bought an item on steep discount when you actually paid full price, or even spending money on the kids without telling your spouse.
Okay, wait, I have to pause and push back on that last one. If I buy my kid a Lego set on a Tuesday and I don't hold a summit with my partner about it, I'm committing financial infidelity. Aren't we pathologizing normal, everyday life here?
It sounds extreme at first glance, and it's a very common reaction to the term. But the mechanism behind the definition is really important. It's not about the maliciousness of buying a toy for your child.
Right.
It's about the breach of mutual, honest communication. Financial infidelity is clinically defined as any purposeful financial deceit in a relationship where there's an established expectation of honesty. The issue isn't the Lego set, it's the hiding of the Lego set.
Ah, I see. So if we have an agreement to run purchases past each other and I deliberately sneak the toy into the house to avoid a sigh or a lecture, it's the deception that damages the trust, not the plastic bricks.
That is the exact distinction. And the core study highlights a fascinating structural reason why this happens. Couples who pay their bills in an unstructured, ad hoc way, meaning they just pay things as they come up without a shared system or a budget, they're far more likely to commit financial infidelity.
Why does a lack of structure lead to lying?
Because a lack of structure provides plausible deniability. If there is no shared reality, there is no accountability. Financial infidelity thrives in the dark.
Because you don't want to trigger the tornado.
Exactly. Hiding a purchase is almost always a symptom of severe conflict avoidance. The person hiding the receipt is terrified of the emotional tornado. Furthermore, the sources note that these secrets can act as a subtext for silent power struggles.
What do you mean by that?
For example, there's a common dynamic where a higher earner feels entitled to do less physical housework, and the lower earner deeply resents it but feels they can't speak up. The resulting financial arguments, or the silent secret spending by the lower earner, they aren't actually about the money. They are proxy wars for control, fairness, and unexpressed anger in the relationship.
Wow. So the money literally becomes the battlefield for everything else that is left unsaid.
It absorbs all the unspoken tension of the relationship.
So now that we understand the deep, incredibly human reasons why we act this way, like why we polarize into misers and spenders, why our attachment styles drive us to build fortresses, why we hide the shopping bags in the trunk of the car, how do we actually navigate this?
I have to build systems.
Right. How do we build practical systems that protect our relationship from our own psychological blind spots?
This brings us to some very innovative practical solutions discussed in a piece from Morning Laziness. They highlight a growing trend experts are calling financial transparency dating.
Financial transparency dating.
Yes. These are deliberate strategies that modern couples are using before they make a long-term legal or marital commitment. However, financial therapists note they are equally effective for resetting a marriage that has gotten stuck in the emotional tornado zone.
I was reading through these strategies, and what struck me is how they take the emotional charge out of the conversation. It treats the relationship like a collaborative team exercise.
That is the entire goal. One of the foundational strategies is a credit file swap and cleanup. This is where both partners pull their full comprehensive credit reports and sit down together to review them.
Which sounds absolutely terrifying for a lot of people.
It requires immense vulnerability. But the mechanism that makes it work is the established ground rule. The goal is not to judge past mistakes. The goal is to catch hidden landmines before they explode.
Like what kind of landmines?
You were looking for things like a forgotten $78 medical collection that went to an old apartment address or a misreported late payment.
Just tiny errors.
Right, these are tiny administrative errors that could ruin your chances of getting a good interest rate on a mortgage together. The couple validates the debts, disputes the inaccuracies, and makes a 30 to 60-day joint plan to clean the reports up.
It's totally neutralizing the shame.
Exactly. The shared philosophy becomes, if it's on your credit report, it's part of our joint planning. It removes the vague, anxious, I think my credit is fine, and replaces it with a document-backed baseline.
It turns what could be a shameful confession into a joint risk review. It's you two against the problem, not you against each other. What's the next strategy?
Another highly effective method is the collaborative lifestyle simulation. Couples create a fictitious, detailed monthly budget based on their actual combined earnings and existing debts.
So it forces the conversation out of abstract, romantic ideas.
Right, like saying, I think we should travel to Europe every year. It grounds it in the practical reality of how their different money maps will actually interact on a random Tuesday in November. It's a low-stakes way to practice negotiating financial limits before any legal entanglement makes it difficult to walk away.
Okay, I want to bring up my absolute favorite detail from the sources. Kevin Capes, who runs a marine operations software company, brought up this yacht captain analogy.
Oh, this is a great concept.
Now, on the surface, comparing the operational management of a multi-million-dollar boat to my weekly grocery budget seems a little ridiculous. How does this actually apply to a normal couple?
The underlying psychology of the analogy is brilliant. He suggests couples link a low-stakes, transparent joint account. This isn't where your life savings go. You just fund it with maybe $500 to $1,000 a month, specifically for shared discretionary expenses.
Things like date nights, shared groceries, or the streaming bills.
Exactly. The key is that both partners have the app on their phone and have real-time visibility into the transactions.
So how does the yacht factor in?
He compares this shared account to how yacht owners and their hired captains shared a digital operational dashboard. When a captain authorizes a $3,000 engine repair, the owner sees it pop up live on their dashboard.
Right.
Because the data is instantly visible, there is no suspicion. The owner doesn't have to wonder what the captain is doing, and the captain doesn't have to nervously justify the expense weeks later. There is no dramatic, tense end-of-month budget meeting where it feels like an interrogation.
Wow. Access beats disclosure.
Access beats disclosure. The information is just there.
I love that. You are treating a dinner date budget with the exact same unemotional operational precision as managing a marine vessel. You don't have to confess that you bought the organic groceries because it's already on the dashboard, but I imagine actually implementing this takes some work.
It does, and we have to ground the enthusiasm with a dose of reality here. Setting up a shared dashboard requires a level of trust that many couples haven't built yet. The research indicates that only 23% of couples currently report managing their finances completely equally.
So jumping straight to a transparent shared account is a huge leap for a lot of people.
It is a massive leap. It removes the shadows. But by treating money as an ongoing, accessible data stream, rather than a moral confession where you have to admit you bought an expensive coffee, couples remove the shame.
Right, because the goal of that shared account isn't to surveil your partner or act as their parole officer.
Not at all. It is to create an environment where the emotional tornado loses its energy simply because the data is transparent. It eliminates the exhausting trust but verify tension.
So after unpacking all this behavioral science, the attachment styles and the financial infidelity statistics, what does this all actually mean for the listener who is sitting there right now, maybe thinking about their own last argument over money?
If we synthesize all these sources, the most important takeaway is a fundamental reframe of how we view ourselves and our partners. These behaviors, the intense arguments, the hiding of the receipts, the anxiety over an unexpected bill, they aren't flaws to be fixed.
They are protective mechanisms to be understood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Money is never just about money. It is a mirror reflecting our childhoods, our deepest need for physical and emotional safety, and our desire for belonging. You are not broken for arguing about a $50 grocery bill.
No, you are human.
You are human, trying desperately to protect your hidden dreams and alleviate your quiet fears. The path forward isn't finding the perfect mathematical spreadsheet. It's developing perfect curiosity about your partner's map and your own.
Think about your own bank statement for a second. If every single dollar you spent was a word in a sentence, what story is your spending telling about what you are most afraid to lose?
That is the real question.
If this conversation felt true for you, if something in here landed, we would love for you to subscribe to Leone Patterns so you never miss what we explore next.
Leave a comment and tell us, what did this bring up for you? We read every single one.
We are building a community here, people who think about money differently, not as a number to chase, but as a human experience to understand.
You are not alone in this.
Yeah.
And we are genuinely glad you are here at Leone Patterns.
Same pace, same questions. See you then.